Hello, my friends. Good afternoon. Now, today we are talking about modal verbs with multiple uses. Now, this is Chapter 2, Part B of our book. Now, we know some modal verbs can, could, may, must, might, but students always ask me, Teacher, what's a modal verb again? So I have the definition. A modal verb is a verb such as can, could, shall, should, ought to, will, or would that is usually used with another verb to express ideas such as possibility, necessity, and permission. A good thing about modal verbs is that they don't conjugate, nor do the verbs that exist after these modal verbs. So modal verbs don't have conjugation. Okay, now they are pronounced modal, modal, modal. Okay. Now, today we are talking about modal verbs for degrees of certainty. Now, to express probable past events, things that we are very certain happened, we use these modal verbs. We use must have or must have in the past participle. For example, the grass was wet this morning, so it must have rained. Now, this is something we think is very probable. The grass was wet, so, I'm almost certain, I'm very sure that it rained. It must have rained. The negative of this is a must not, or the contraction is mustn't, have, and past participle. The dog is outside, so you mustn't have locked the door. Mustn't have. Now, we also have can't have in the past participle or couldn't have in the past participle. And these are the same. These are the same. They are obviously spelled and pronounced differently, but they mean the same thing. The gas tank was empty, so he can't or couldn't have filled it up. Okay. Now, to express possible past events, things that we are not certain, that there is some uncertainty surrounding these past events, we use these modal verbs. We use could have or could have and the past participle. For example, the power was out, so there could have been a storm earlier. Now, when I say the power was out, what is this power? Power is poder. What does this mean, the power? The power means the electricity. We can use power or electricity for electricidade. Now, and I say the power was out. What does this mean? The poder estava fora? No. The power was out when we mean that electricity is not working, when the electricity is not functioning, we can use the word out. We frequently use the word out. So the power was out. This is the electricity was off in the house. The power was out, so there could have been a storm earlier. I don't know. I wasn't home. It's a possibility. Maybe there was a storm. There could have been a storm earlier. We can use may have in the past participle. I can't find my keys. They may have fallen from my purse, for example. I don't know. I can't find them. Maybe they fell from my purse. They may have fallen from my purse. We can use might have or might have in the past participle. For example, she said she'd call, but she didn't. She might have forgotten. Maybe she forgot. She might have forgotten. And in the negatives, we have may not have past participle and might not have and past participle. And I have some examples here. If you want to pause the video and read them, feel free. Now, we also have modal verbs for giving advice. Giving advice, giving suggestions, or giving opinions. Now, for the present and the future, we can use must or must not in the negative, or mustn't. Mustn't is the contraction of must not. For example, you must do your homework, or you mustn't forget your homework. Okay? Now, we can use have to or have got to. Now, these conjugate have to and have got to in the third person singular, has got to or has to. And have to and have got to are the same. They mean the same things. So why does have got to exist if have to and have got to are the same? I don't know why have got to exist, but it exists, my friends, and we use it often, so it's necessary to know about. You don't have to use it, but you have to know about it. And I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, but I teach them. So here, you have to listen to your teacher. You could also say you have got to listen to your teacher. And we often use contractions here too between the pronoun and have. For example, here we have she's got to get up early. This would be she has got to get up early without the contraction. But teacher, this she's, couldn't this be she is? I can understand the confusion, but no, it can't be she is got to get up early. She is got to get up early doesn't make any sense. This she's is a she has. She has got to get up. And that always brings up the question, how do you know if it's she has or she is? By the context. You see this got to get up, got to. You know that it will be a has here. Has got to, have got to. And we have this had better and the negative had better not. In the contraction, apostrophe D, better. And I say this a lot. And we almost always use this with the contraction. I say this a lot. I say this every day. Every day I say, Willie, you better do your homework. Willie, you'd better go to sleep. Willie, you'd better eat your broccoli. I say this a lot. This is very common. And I almost always use it with the contraction. Now, these are for the present and the future. For the past, if you want to give opinions, advice, suggestions for the past, use should have or should not have. We have the contraction here, should have and shouldn't have. And the past participle as well. For example, you should have waken up early. And this is easy to translate. Você deveria ter acordado mais cedo. You shouldn't have stayed in bed so long. Você não deveria ter ficado in bed so long. Okay? Now, don't use must for advice and opinions in the past. Don't use any of these for advice or opinions in the past. For opinions, advice, suggestions in the past, use should have or should not have. Okay. Now, this brings up a rather strange contraction. Shouldn't have. Now, shouldn't have, which is how we pronounce it, shouldn't have, is a contraction for should not have. It is commonly spoken, but almost never written. For example, this is a CD from a popular 1980s group, the Buzzcocks, which is called Ever Fallen in Love with Someone You Shouldn't Have. So you can see this written, but rarely is it written, but we often say it in conversation. Shouldn't have. Okay. Now, some other interesting words, some other maybe new words in this chapter. Presume and assume. Now, you see assume, I think you will translate it as assumir, but assume does not mean assumir. This is a false cognate. Assume means to suppose, supor, I don't know. To suppose something without reason or evidence is to assume something. And presume, this is to suppose something with some probability or evidence. So let's say you're outside and you see some dark clouds outside. You could say, wow, I presume it's going to rain. I see some dark clouds. I presume it's going to rain. This is with probability or evidence. Now, when you assume something, this is without much evidence. For example, you can say, it hasn't rained for a long time, so I assume it's going to rain today. Well, that's not a lot of evidence. Assume. Okay, some other words. We have figure and have a hunch. Now, figure and have a hunch. We use this to express a belief based on rational concepts. For example, you could say, wow, there are a lot of dark clouds outside, so I figure it'll rain. This is a belief based on a rational concept. The dark clouds, you figure it'll rain. You could also say, wow, it's raining and sunny at the same time. I have a hunch there will be a rainbow. This is a belief, your belief that there will be a rainbow, that is based on rational concepts, that is rainy and sunny